So part 2 of chapter 1. We just discussed why we communicate and the communication model and how it's transactional. The third thing that we're going to discuss is the communication misconceptions. 1. Not all communication seeks understanding. We don't always have to analyze, what someone is saying. So it doesn't all pertain to that. 2, more is not always better. Sometimes it's better to leave a situation alone. And as you become a better and a more effective public speaker or communicator, you will then learn when enough is enough and when you need to tone it down. Another one is that it will not solve all of our problems because we think if we just communicate, it'll solve all of our problems. But sometimes there's a deeper issue that you've got to figure out. And sometimes it doesn't have to deal with you, but it has to deal with someone else. And being an effective communicator is not a natural ability. I go back to thinking about the baby. So when a baby is born, does the baby know how to communicate? No, the baby doesn't. The baby knows how to vocalize and the baby knows how to cry, but we teach the baby how to communicate. So for instance, the baby comes and the baby cries. So as a natural parent, you pick the baby up, you try to feed it, still cries. You change its diaper, still cries. So you try all these different avenues for this baby. Once you get down further down the way, you recognize the baby's cry. So the baby cries, you're like, oh, needs to be changed. And you can tell the difference in the cry. So what you've done is reinforced it. So once the baby cries this way, you put a bottle in its mouth and it stops crying. So the baby says, if I cry like this, I'm going to get that bottle. So we reinforce what that baby does. As the child grows and develops, we start doing more. So if we want to teach the child sign language, when they're hungry, we say, oh, you're hungry? More, more. And then the baby says more, and then it gets that it wants more or eat. And then we keep reinforcing that. So we are not born into this world being a natural communicator. It is learned behavior, and especially to be an effective one. To be an effective communicator, you're doing the right thing. You've taken this course, and you're keeping an open mind, which is what I suggest that you do. So the next thing is that I really want you to look over what quantitative and qualitative and what the difference in the two are. Quantitative, you can always think of quantity, how much. So how many communications do you have in a day versus quality. So versus that qualitative, how rich, how great are those communication when you have them. So for us in this class, we're really going to study more of the qualitative communication that we have. We're not going to be concerned about how much or how long. We're going to talk about how rich they are. And just like I always like to think about this as fettuccine alfredo or that really good chocolate cake that you want. You know, like you really want it and you want it every day, but it's too rich to have it. Well, you're not always going to have the quality communication every single day because it's a lot. It's a lot of the disclosure. It's a lot about being empathetic and going the other way. So you're not going to have this kind of communication every day, just like you wouldn't have fettuccine alfredo or a chocolate cake. Another area that I think is really interesting in this chapter is social media and how we use that to communicate. More and more in our world, we are using social media. I mean, you're taking a class online about interpersonal communication. I'm teaching a public speaking class online. So how do we work that into our worlds? And I really want you to think about that and think about the text messages that you send to other people, maybe how the emails you send, the tone that you have in the emails, and that's so important to interpersonal. And the last thing that I want to kind of go over in this is how to become a competent communicator. And I really want you to write down in a piece of paper where you write your notes down about these competence. And then at the end of the semester, I want to see how you are. Do you feel like you've gained the knowledge? Do you feel like that you have learned from these? So the first one is you have a large skill set. You know how to communicate in many different situations, which is why a lot of times employers will say things like, interpersonal skills on job interviews, or how are your interpersonal skills? So having a large set of skills to use so that you can use and discuss maybe with more difficult people. Another one is adaptability, being able to take the skill set that you know and adapting it to many situations. One skill set is not always going to work. So we're going to learn a whole lot of different skill sets throughout this semester. You're going to be able to perform each of these successfully, and you're going to have empathy. You're going to be able to look at someone else's situation and see how you would feel about it. Well, this is the end of chapter 1. So there's 2 videos for this. This is the second video, and then I gave you the first video. In the middle of September, I will start giving more information about the case studies and the TED Talk. So in about a couple of weeks, don't worry about those yet. All right? So thanks so much. If you have any questions, email me.